Ladies and gentlemen, today Dr. Abu Suud will discuss political system in Islam. Islam, when we hear this word, we only think of a religion. It is a religion, but Islam is a system of principles and practice of belief, worship, ethics, social life, and economical life. This differs from other definitions or concepts of religion by carrying social and economical aspects, and it differs from economical or social doctrines by carrying principles of belief and worship. Dr. Abu Suud will discuss the political system in Islam, which is a part of the social and economical life in the whole system of Islam. And this should be actually considered in the complete Islamic system. This lecture was organized by the Muslim Students Association of Iowa State University and Committee on Lectures and Government of Student Bodies have sponsored the lecture. We acknowledge their help and hope in the future we can have a more convenient time for our lectures so that more audience will enjoy to follow, and refreshments will be served during the lecture. So I did not say much about Dr. Abu Suud because it is the third time he is with us, so he is one of our friends. We don't need to introduce him. He is with this lecture.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of the Almighty God, I start. I pray Him to shed His peace on our Prophet Muhammad and the other prophets, that He shed peace on you as well, and that He would guide us towards what is right, good, and beneficial. I thank those who have asked me to come, and I am obliged to all the audience to have the trouble to attend. I pray that I would not disappoint them and that they would at least share some of the ideas which I may succeed in conveying to you. As our friend has already told you, Islam is a sort of a secular religion, if I may use the word secular, in a sense that it covers both domains of life, the material secular affairs as well as the theological belief and spiritual values. Its philosophy rotates on oneness. My last lecture here practically was about this philosophy of the Islamic religion, and I explained in full the word oneness as the basis of life itself. Life emanates from one single source. Muslims, as definitely Christians and Jews and any other religion, they believe that there is a creator to whatever is in existence. And this creator to Muslims is strictly one, infinite, omnipotent, etc. So this is again a philosophy out of which we are going to build all our Islamic concepts, whether these concepts are political, social, or economic. The basic principles of such a philosophy is that God, which we like to call Allah, for the simple reason that in Arabic the word God means ilah, not Allah. And ilah can have a feminine gender, which is ilaha, can have a plural number, gods, aliha, whilst Allah in Arabic has no feminine gender, no plural number. And that's why we love to call him Allah and not God. However, there is no translation to the word, and I may use God in that sense. God is absolute to us, and we recognize that, and we worship as He ordained us to worship Him. The second point is that the community of believers in this philosophy or in this doctrine of Islam, they live together, they'll have to live together in harmony, in accordance with the commandments and laws as revealed by God through His prophets and through our prophet Muhammad. In this context, I may add that we don't think or we don't take religions as different religions, because we believe that what has been revealed to Abraham or to Moses or to Jesus or to Muhammad is the same, Allah, God. And all what they have given us is, or must be as a matter of fact, very cogent, logical, homogeneous. More or less, it is the same thing, so we call it the religion, and we don't agree to religions. And a Muslim is by belief and conviction, he is a Christian and he is a Jew. It is a part of our belief to believe that way. And of course, we believe in Mary and we believe in the Immaculate Conception, etc. This is a part of our belief. All prophets, those whom we have known and those we haven't known, are acknowledged by a Muslim because it is the religion of God and they were the messengers of that one single God. Then we come to the other important aspect, which is the individual citizen. This citizen identifies himself in that society as a full active member of his community, enjoying on an equal basis all the rights and political liberties prescribed by Islam, as we shall see them. And he lives within a community, an organized community, a political community, which is the Islamic State. The political system in Islam is devised to fit in the general framework of the comprehensive Islamic ideology, which must aim at enabling man to worship God in the most practical and cogent way. The word worship here may sound rather strange to the ears of a non-Muslim, and in fact it is. But in Islam, there are only two categories of activities which an individual may undertake. The one is the performance of rituals, that is, to adhere to the prescribed form of code of mannerism, giving expression to the faith of Islam. Praying, for instance, 5 times a day, or fasting during the month of Ramadan once a year, or paying zakat, which is a sort of a tax on, we call it practically, the God's right on fortunes. You have to pay zakat. All these and other things are rituals. And the individual, he is supposed to perform them as an individual. It's a relationship between him and his creator, except for zakat, of course, should be collected by the state. And the other form of activity is worshipping God. And by this it is meant that the activity which results from the conformity with the eternal laws, that's another expression, which may be similar to what is generally called the natural laws. We don't believe very much in nature because nature is created and it is not separate from what it entails. It is the aggregate of what is there. So nature itself cannot make laws, but there are laws which go with the beings within that nature. So conformity with the laws is worshipping, and we can also say that such a conformity to us is good. And good in this context means that activity which adds to the welfare of human society. It is not a mere abstract value, but it is the applied face of faith. Our prophet, peace be upon him, says, faith is what is inculcated in the heart and proven by action. I mean, if you believe, that is not enough to be a believer or have got faith. Unless you act in a way which proves your faith, then your faith is not there. The best, he also says, the best among you are those who are more useful to people. So we have to act in order to be faithful or to be good believers. And our action must be that quality or that activity which would add to the welfare of our society. And that's why worshipping in our religion means doing the good for the sake of the good in order to increase the welfare of humanity or the human society in which you live. In the political philosophy, we have got the individual, which is the basis of this philosophy. And in fact, he must be, because after all, any system in any society, it is there to help the individual to enjoy this life or to live this life in the most comfortable way, the most easy, the most profitable, and the most convenient. And according to Islam, the individual is the basis of the society. And his identity must be kept integral. We cannot overlook the individual. Human beings, man and woman, are basically good in Islam. Each person is born neutral, with no inherited sins or malicious nature. The individual may be influenced, and definitely he does, by his environment, and may consequently adopt some right or wrong ideas. But nobody is to be taken responsible for the mistake of others. As God has created us with mind and will, we are supposed to think and to choose for ourselves, discriminating between what is right and what is wrong, what is bad and what's good, and to act in accordance with our own decisions, even if such decisions are diametrically contrary to what our society believes in. Every human being is born free and equal to others in all human rights. Not the least of them is the right of free thinking, to judge things and to express one's own views in openness, liberty, and in public. All humans are created the same way, and accordingly, there are equal humans. I put between brackets, of course, Jesus was not born the same way, and definitely Jesus was exceptional that way. There can never be a privilege by birth that would necessitate any discrimination in society. The Prophet says, by God, if Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad, steals, I shall cut off her hand. His daughter was Fatima, and that he made the oath, even if it was his daughter who steals, he will chop off her hand, because that was the law. He also says, people are equal as the teeth of a comb, same level. People are equal as the teeth of a comb. An Arab will have no advantage over an non-Arab, nor a white over a black, except by fear of losing love of God and the compliance with the laws of God. And these 4 words is the translation of one word, which is taqwa. Anyhow, such equality is a cornerstone in any Islamic political system. as it is in fact behind many other economic and social systems developed within the Islamic framework. Its importance in the political field is manifest, as it represents the counterbalance of another important core in the Islamic rule, and that is justice. We generally talk about justice in any political concept or philosophy because you want to be just, at the same time you want to apply equality. And there is a lot of literature in the political science regarding the conflict or the contradiction or the difficulty of applying justice within the framework of equality. We'll come to that later. Equality in Islam gives the individual the right not only to express openly his views, but also to contest the ruler's views, and even to ask the judge to rescind any government order on the ground that such an order contradicts an Islamic law, enjoinment, or even commendable advice. The reason is very simple. Because the Islamic State is supposed to derive its laws from the lawgiver, and the lawgiver is Allah, is God. So the ruler cannot supersede God's ruling. It is this equality that guarantees the prevalence of justice in the Islamic State. As all individuals are equal by virtue of their humanity, they become equal before the law. Let it be known at this point that law in Islam is entirely based on revealed principal legal rules, which are considered as solid and unchangeable as axioms themselves. They are eternal laws because they pertain to the eternal, immutable human nature formulated by God who created people from one soul. The Islamic State is that state where Muslims are in majority, opting for exercising their religion and are thus enjoined to apply their Islamic laws. In such a state, the basic standards of equality and justice are not man-made, nor are they subject to change according to the views of the ruling individual or group of individuals, even though such rulers are elected by the collectivity of the populace. So the individual in an Islamic state is absolutely covered. In that respect, he is the basis of the society. But he cannot live without a society. Islam takes it for granted that man is a social being by instinct, by creation, and thus must live in a society in order to exercise the functions of his physical powers and of his moral values. Man needs food, shelter, and material security to keep his physical existence, but he has other natural requirements as well. To use Erich Fromm's words, the problem of man's existence, then, is unique in the whole of nature. He is partly divine, partly animal, partly infinite, partly finite. The necessity to find ever new solutions for the contradictions in his existence, to find ever higher forms of unity with nature, his phenomenon and himself, is the source of all psychic forces which motivate man of all his passions and anxieties. Quotation. That is a quotation from Fromm's The Sane Society. Any reader in political science nowadays, he would come to Laswell here, Alexander Gray and the others, and all of them, they insist that the trouble nowadays in the political conception is this lack of the moral consideration which represents the human values in the political setup. And the main reason is that the political science nowadays has assumed a secondary importance if compared to the economic part of it. Politics became a part of the economic system and subject to it. Fromm went too far in this, perhaps not, and he enumerates the non-material requirements of a human being in a 5-point syndrome. The first is relatedness, that is the necessity of being in touch and harmony with other beings, animates and inanimates. The second is transcendence and creativeness, and that's the urge of the individual to perpetuate himself, if not in person, then by deeds and creativeness, by building up and feeling his constructiveness. Every individual has got this innate requirement. The third is rootedness, and that is the brotherliness, which is the natural desire for affirmation of human fraternity and for establishing a basis for love, which is the greatest lacking sentiment in our days. The fourth is sense of identity, that is the eternal inquisitiveness of man to know himself. He is the author and the object of his own actions, which must take place within a society. No man can identify himself if he is cut off from his fellow men or alienated from his community. And the fifth is the need for a frame of orientation. A man is endowed by senses. He must have some direction for his strife in life, and such orientation has to agree with his reasoning, that is, has to be logically accepted to him. Erich Fromm believes that if these natural needs are not amply fulfilled, as the case is in modern society, man is bound to suffer physically and psychologically and to succumb to pathological insanity. He could be right, he could be wrong in his diagnosis of modern societies. But there is no doubt about the fact that these societies are miserable and are greatly unhappy and depressed. Islam treats this problem in its usual characteristic simplicity. It provides basic code of laws to administer man's activities motivated by his natural needs in course of his dealings with his individual fellow men and with his collectivity or government that represents them. As these needs are inherent in man by virtue of his existence and creation, the laws administering them become basically unchangeable, irrespective of times, places, and environments. That's why they are called eternal laws. To start with, Islam considers the institution of family as inevitable for what it calls the good society, or what Fromm calls the sane society. Parenthood in Islam is codified, giving rights to and incurring obligations on parents and their children. And within the frame of the Islamic family, the individuals find the satiation of most human needs. They find love, and they assert their relatedness, the continuity that meets their yearning for transcendence, the harmony with people and things around them that establishes their feet on the road to relatedness, and the milieu, or the environment, which they can freely act to identify themselves. That explains the importance which Islam gave to all family relations, to marriage, to divorce, guardianship, inheritance, childhood, and parenthood. Then there are the different diversified laws covering the activities of man outside his family, in business, in exercising his civil activities, and even in his daily moral behavior. You will find all these things very much detailed in the Islamic laws. The individual is considered the basis of the family and is therein provided with security, love, and relatedness. The family institution, by turn, is the element constituting the society, in a sense that the Islamic society is composed of those individuals who are brought up in families governed by the Islamic code. Hence, the importance of the integrity of the individual and the preservation of his rights, as well as his consciousness of his obligations and of his duties towards his fellow men, his collectivity, and his government, all this become quite obvious and discernible. In this individualistic cum social setup, where the personality, identity, and liberty of the individual are maintained and safeguarded by the eternal and divine laws, both moral and material requirements are provided for without conflict or extravagance. The individual has a natural, innate incentive to sublimate and to elate his own self as a result of his divinity, and has all the possibilities to develop such a natural tendency by doing the good for the sake of the good, and by fighting the wrong and profane. Thus, there would be no reason for narcissism, destructiveness, incest, herd conformity, or chauvinism and irrationality. These are the 5 cons, the contrary parts of Fromm's sanity syndrome. Man shall have every possibility to be active in the economic field, to earn as much as he can without having the temptation of misusing the wealth, because he will be free from the psychosis of the modern insane man living in the Western industrial civilization, and because the Islamic system would immediately check him from indulging in laxities, eccentricities, and profanity. Moreover, the Islamic economic system, in contrast with the capitalistic and communistic systems, and in compatibility with the political setup in Islam, is so designed that power is divorced from wealth. Money in an Islamic state can never be a source of distinction or a monopoly of individuals who would harness it to achieve social, political, or even moral power over other individuals. This is another subject, but one cannot treat the political system as an independent entity separated from other economic and social aspects, because all such aspects are only one different face, or they are only different faces to the same ideology or doctrine of Islam. I should like to expand a bit, elaborate a bit upon this point, because it is really very important. The trouble today is money has become a sort of a master to humanity. I do remember André Gide, the French economist, who used to say, on peut acheter même les hommes avec l'argent. You can even buy men with money. And I attended a lecture in Springfield University, and he was talking about classes. And I asked him, would be there any classes in this society? I'm a newcomer to this country. And he said, definitely there are. And I said, on which basis? He said, the basis of wealth. If you have got 1 million, you are a good man. 2 million, you are a better man, sure. So human values have been now estimated by dollar. Unfortunately, the dollar is losing its value now. And I'm afraid that man also is losing the value accordingly. The main thing is this. It is a bit little tricky, but I want to tell you very earnestly that this is very important from the political point of view. Let people work and gain, but penalize wealth, penalize money. Don't allow money to be above every being as it is today. Subject money to the law of nature. The law of nature is whatever being on this earth must depreciate. So let money depreciate. If ever you do this, and I can prove it economically, I'm an economist and a monetary economist by profession, and this is the right approach to every problem we have. To your slum inflation, as you call it here, which is a dumb expression, it is the only way that we can have development without inflation, that we can have a better distribution of wealth without communism, that we have a collective life with some moral value whereby an individual is better and highly respected, more highly respected than others, because he is more beneficial to his society, not because he have got more millions of dollars than others. Well, I'm sorry, that may be another subject, and I should like to simply to tell you that this is not something, a fairy tale, but if even you go to the father of inflation, which is Lord Maynard Keynes, you will find in his very famous book of employment, Theory of Employment, that it's only because there is no carrying cost for money that this money has assumed the superiority of every being, and there is no justification for interest whatsoever, except that we, human beings, we who created money, allowed money to be a sort of a semi-god or half-god. Not only this, but he goes further, and he said, Lord Keynes, that if we penalize money, we will have no interest at all in what Karl Marx said. We will have a new social setup. And I simply should like to conclude by a very simple remark that this idea of penalizing money, which was supposed to be a very, very modern concept, has been established in the economic system of Islam 1400 years ago. Now let us move and talk about the political concept. About the individual's right. According to Islam, all individuals are created the same way, and are thus, they are considered equal servants of God. The rights of humans are simultaneously attached to their obligations towards their Creator, and it is this common characteristic of being servants of God that gives them equality in their human rights. Consequently, if they deny their servitude to the Almighty Creator, they automatically lose their rights. And when there are no established common rights, there is no equality nor justice among men. This is a subtle Islamic philosophical inference which must be underlined as it serves the foundation of the whole political and human relations in the Islamic society. The individual here is a servant of God, enjoined by his only master and seeking the satisfaction and love of his Creator. This is not a mere metaphysical concept, because Islamic laws deal directly in all matters of worship, as I have defined it, and because worship is the positive material and moral activities which the individual exercises in course of his everyday life. Having this origin of equality in mind, and building upon it, Islam establishes to all citizens, Muslims and non-Muslims, the basic human rights which have been specified and elaborated 1300 years ago, before the French Revolution or the American Constitution. The first and foremost human right guaranteed to individuals is the liberty of thought. Muslims are allowed to fight others only in two cases: when they are attacked in their persons, countries, fortunes, and their honor, that means women, or when they are denied the right to express their views and or to propagate their Islamic ideology. The Prophet never fought anybody because the latter did not accept Islam, but he did fight those who denied him the liberty of expressing his belief and restrained him from inviting people to embrace his mission. This liberty of thought is established in the religion and is an inviolable sacred right. It gives any citizen the right to criticize the ruler and to express his ideas without fear or reluctance. In fact, Muslims are commanded to come out with their views, to advise their rulers, to exhort others to do the good, and to forbid others from doing the wrong. I can quote you scores of verses from the holy book of the Muslims, the Quran, where every Muslim is ordered, enjoined by God to do that. Not only this, but he is ordered by the Prophet, if a ruler drifts away from the right path, he must advise him, and if he doesn't listen, or if he is persecuted, he is allowed to kill the ruler in order to defend the law of God. Next to liberty of thought comes the liberty of action. Analogous to the first liberty, the individual is free to work and to do whatever he deems desirable, with one limitation, and that is, he must act within the Islamic law without trespassing or transgressing. This is only logic, as absolute liberty of action would mean chaos, anarchic relations, and even the negation of existence of laws themselves. All Muslims have the same right of action and work by virtue of the texts of their Quran, which texts compose their laws. However, this right, as all other human rights, is extended to all non-Muslims as long as they live within the Islamic State and are subject to its jurisdiction. A major human right follows, the right of private ownership. This right has assumed great importance in the contemporary civilization, which is characterized by materialism. It is a main issue that discriminates between democratic capitalism and scientific socialism or Marxism. Both doctrines are claiming the same end, which is the optimum material welfare of the individual. But both could not realize any substantial success in the domain of human happiness, mainly because their exaggeration and eccentricity, which carried them so adrift as to deny moral values, to overlook human soul, and to concentrate on pure material gain. Islam confirms the individual's right to work as the only means to obtain wealth. Everyone is entitled to the proceeds of his work and has the liberty to dispose of this wealth. He can buy any property or business or spend the money in any way permissible under the Islamic law. Yet, this ownership is considered as one in proxy of the possession of Allah, of God, to all that is on earth or in heaven. Islam considers man the vicegerent of the Creator and gives him the trust of all kinds of property, and the Muslim can own that title of ownership in this sole capacity. The inference here is that the individual is not allowed to misuse the title to ownership and has no right to benefit out of it at the expense or the risk of others. In short, the Islamic State is bound to respect private ownership and has no right whatsoever to confiscate any individual's property without a justifiable reasoning according to the Islamic jurisprudence, not according to what the ruler believes is right or beneficial. The fourth and last individual right, human right, is equality in justice and in chances. As for equality in justice, or what they call it today, equality before the law, everyone is subject to the law which is accepted to be revealed by God through his prophet. The ruler and the ruled are absolutely equal before this divine law, which must be applied if ever there is an Islamic State. Islam does not recognize any immunity to any person, be him the head of the state or the head of the legislative. If any citizen can prove that any member of the government has violated the law, he is entitled to bring this officer before justice. The culprit will have to be punished if ever convicted. Under such circumstances, the head of the state has no right to protect the officer or even to pardon him after being condemned. The philosophy behind this sweeping equality in justice is based on the assumption that the prevailing laws are set by God and his apostle, and that the punishment of the transgressor is ordained as well by the same divine authority. The ruler of the Islamic State has no authority to change such laws, nor has he the right to interfere with their application. As for equality in chances, Islam makes it incumbent on the state to provide the poor and the needy with a minimum material standard of living. In Islam, every citizen is entitled to some basic standard of living. He must have enough to eat as a normal man. He must be reasonably well dressed. He must have an accommodation to live in. He must have an access to education. These are the minimum which must be guaranteed to everybody, and this is not only a sort of a rhetoric commendation. A corner of Islam is paying a certain tax which the Muslims call, or God called, zakat, and the zakat is a fund which is earmarked to provide the poor, to provide for the poor all these minimum requirements. In a sense, that it is a sort of an injunction. Every Muslim who has got a certain amount of money and above, something say about $500, it is specified, he would pay 2.5% of his total wealth to this fund every year. And the poor has a right on it. It is a divine right. The taxpayer here, he pays it because it is a part of his religion. We have got 5 corners of Islam. That is, we have to believe in the oneness of God, and we have to believe in Muhammad as a prophet as well. The second corner is to perform our prayers. The third corner is to pay this tax, this zakat. So, if you feel that you are a Muslim, you are under this obligation. If you don't pay it, you may be killed if you fight against non-payment. It is a right of God on your money, and you cannot run away with it. It is not a certain ritual. If you do it, if you don't do it, it is something which is yours. No, it is a corner of the Islamic society, and it's a part of your rituals as well as a part of your worship. So such a right is the biggest guarantee, and it is a very big guarantee indeed, in order to have some equality in chances of life, so that a man born from a rich family or a poor family will have the same amity of life, will have the same possibilities to work, will have the same possibilities to educate himself, and will have the same possibilities to establish himself in life. Well, having covered this background, we go now to the government institution. Technically speaking, no society can exist without having a government or a ruling body to enforce whatever laws this society may choose for itself. Discipline is the measure rod of the success of any organized society. And by discipline, it is meant the system of conformity with the established laws without injustice or prejudice. Islam is a highly disciplined code of life. In matters of rituals, it imposes strict discipline, be it in prayers or in fasting or in pilgrimage. In temporal matters, which are called worshipping, as I defined it, in Islamic terminology, Islam enjoins detailed rules of methodology and clear regulations of behavior, thus setting the discipline of all human dealings and human intercourse. It is enough to give one example which illustrates the significance of discipline in this political system. The Prophet says, if you are free in a desert, choose from among you a leader. And he reiterates the necessity of following the leader and obeying him as long as his orders do not violate any Islamic law or injunction. As Islam was revealed in piecemeal, indicating the rules and laws administering the whole dealings in our everyday life, so these laws are not really a sort of imaginary rules. They are not conceptual ones. They have been revealed only to answer some begging question of our society. So, when we say we have to follow the laws or these rules are not pure presumptions. these are rules which have been revealed in order to administer man in his everyday life, and they treat the basic elements of a human nature. Islam ordained the establishment of a state because God enjoined the application of his laws even by material force. It has improved upon the old criterion, which was to give to Caesar whatever belongs to Caesar and give to God whatever belongs to God, for the simple reason that everything according to our conception belongs to God, and Caesar has nothing on this earth. He is as human as anybody else. At the same time, Islam has conferred on humans the responsibility of applying the laws and executing God's orders, which orders and laws comprise every domain and aspect of human life. Thus, it becomes imperative to establish a political institution to implement these laws and to defend the human rights which God has prescribed for all men on earth. Well, there are so many texts in the Holy Book which ordains that we have to execute God's orders, and we have to fight for it if we are checked or restrained from it. And there are so many rules which ordains again the constitution of a state, in a sense a government, in the sense of a government whereby there is a ruler, and we have to obey this ruler, and he has also to give the command that he must comply with the laws of the religion. And I simply would give one text here to show that how is the discipline in this concept of Islamic political state. The Prophet says, "He who throws off the obedience of the ruler will meet God on the day of resurrection without possessing any plea, and he who dies without having taken an oath of allegiance to the head of the state, which we call bay'at in our language, will die like a pagan." So a Muslim cannot be a Muslim without a state. He cannot be a Muslim without paying a certain allegiance to a certain political unit. He becomes as a pagan. So it is so deep in our faith, in our belief, that we must live in a state in order to be Muslims. And I'm telling you, in fact, all of us Muslims, at this moment, we feel a certain sort of estrangement. We are very much really under great stress because of the simple reason that as Muslims we haven't got one single Islamic state today. The Muslims all over the world are living under governments which do not belong to them. They have been recently born after being subjugated and colonized by Western powers. And these Western powers have adopted different systems of colonization, not the least of them the American system of very subtle colonization. Now, the colonizer, he doesn't like to see an Islamic state because he's not a Muslim. And he doesn't like it, because if ever it exists, he will not be there, because that is the right of man to be free and not colonized, to be the master of himself, not the slave of others. He is only the servant of God. So we are fighting as Muslims, very much really indeed, in order to establish one Islamic state in this world. And we believe that this is it will be really a good omen to humanity if we succeed in doing it, because we are convinced that if we really do it, we can give a new aspect to life. We can give a new concept of society. We are not going to the extreme right, like the materialist democratic ideas, nor to the extreme left, like the Marxist material ideas, We are going straight forward in order, in a balanced way, where our souls and our material needs, our values and our necessary requirements for life are in good balance and are very highly organized and very well codified. Now, Islam has not prescribed any definite shape of the political system, in a sense that he gave us some basic rules for any Islamic state. But Islam never prescribed a certain democratic or non-democratic system. Is it monarchic or non-monarchic? Is it a republic or is it a collective thing? We don't care about that much, really. The main reason is, of course, that what is needed is to apply the Islamic law. So if we have a president of a republic, or if he is, it's a group of collective leadership, or if it is so and so, that matters very little. What is necessary? There must be a state, and the law of the state must be basically the Islamic law, and there must be a head of a state. It cannot be governed by collectivity on equal terms, otherwise the responsibility will be immediately negated, because who committed the mistake, nobody can tell. And nobody, the third and important principle is, nobody is above the law. Any individual in the Islamic State will have the right to bring the head of the state before the judge and would ask the judge to rescind a certain law if this law violates or goes in contradiction to any Islamic rule or law. The foundation of this Islamic State, as any other political concept, is built first and foremost on its ideology. That is the comprehensive conception of humans inasmuch as their interrelations and their relations with their Creator are concerned. These relations are codified and organized in a harmonious manner that links all aspects of life together without separating the religious from the secular and the spiritual from the temporal. Islam advocates that there are eternal laws, as we have said. The idea is that the creative power is not a blind, incidental one, but it is a conscious or knowledgeable and omnipotent power that caused the universe to exist according to deliberate, sophisticated, and extremely accurate laws. In empirical sciences, such as physics and biology, we can easily follow these laws, discover some of them, and build on their relationships. In humanities, we are handicapped by our natural inability to understand life and subsequently to understand ourselves. That explains the backwardness of all human sciences if compared to other sciences, and makes one more inclined to accept the revealed laws as basis for human relations. Luckily enough, the Islamic doctrine was not preconceived by Muhammad, nor did it start by formulating its ideas and imagining its concepts. So, all the laws which have been prescribed to us answers immediate questions which have been at that time and which will continue to be as long as man is still a Homo sapien. The problem of political science today is sovereignty. Who is the sovereign? And what is the sovereign? Now, contrary to all contemporary political systems, sovereignty in Islam does not lie in people. So democracy to us doesn't mean anything. Nor is it in the hands of a monarch or a dictator. Sovereignty is confined to Allah, the Almighty Creator, the Omnipotent and the Lawgiver. Generally speaking, sovereignty is described as that body whose word is law, and that's Montesquieu, and who is in a position to enforce the law. In other words, it is the supreme power that makes laws and enforces them either directly or indirectly. In Western systems, people are the supreme power, and they delegate their prerogatives either to institutions such as the executive, legislative, and judiciary in a modern democracy, or to collectivity such as the party in recent communistic countries, or to one single person as in the case of totalitarian dictatorships. In Islam, the sovereign is God, who is the lawgiver. People are his vicegerents in the matter of applying his laws. But as people in their collectivity cannot be the ruled and the rulers, they elect a person or persons to perform this function, that is, specifically to execute the laws and commandments of God as revealed to his apostle, peace be upon him. Whatever the shape of government may be, this government will have no power or jurisdiction that enables it to change the Islamic laws. If there are some new instances that require new legislation, which is normal, the competent body in the government may legislate, providing such new laws does not contradict or rescind or violate or modify any outstanding Islamic law. Sovereignty is therefore a prerogative of the Almighty, who assigned its execution to the nation or the populace of Muslims. The people are ordained to choose their government and to invest into it that executive authority and to abide by the government rule as long as this rule is in compliance with the Islamic law. As for the principles of government, any system of ruling in any Islamic state must be built on the consultation principle, which we call shura, S-H-U-R-A, shura. By this, it is meant that the ruler is under the obligation not to take any decision in an unclassified or uncodified issue before consulting the competent, learned people designated for such consultation. In fact, the whole political system is built on this shura principle, which leaves no room for any arbitrary decision or corrupt tendency or dictatorial imposition. Islam did not give us the details of the system by which shura should be applied. Yet, there is every reason to believe that it must be committing on the ruler, unless he is authorized by the counseling body to take the course he deems most fit. However, such a discretion must not be absolute, and it should always be confined to specific issues as exceptional cases. Another shape or another principle of the Islamic government is a sort of contract. The government is appointed by a system which we call it bay'at, which is paying allegiance. The head of the state must be elected, and a covenant is taken from him to comply with the Islamic injunctions. If he ever deviates, he is susceptible to be removed from his office by the representatives of the people. Against this, he is given a covenant that he will be obeyed and no one will revolt against him in any way as long as he observes the Islamic laws, and then he commands allegiance and obedience. Otherwise, Muslim will no more be bound to obey. There is another two important corners in any Islamic government. The first is a sort of a legislative council, and this we call Ahlul Hall wal Aqd, those who can decide on juristic matters. In all matters of legislation, the issues are to be referred to a body of top learned citizens who are elected either directly by the people or indirectly by elected professional bodies. The ruler is bound to consult them in all legislative matters, and their ruling is binding on him. Finally, we have got the council of the learned people. and we call it Ahlul Ilm, those who know, the learned people. And whenever there arises a need for new legislation, and when a new law must be enacted to meet this need, the judiciary will have the final word regarding the Islamic constitutionality of such a new law. This is more or less the same as the judiciary body, but it is elected from among the learned Muslims, and its ruling is binding on the ruler and his executive body. Such is the outline of the Islamic concept of a state. And its peculiarity, of course, is that it is not man-made. If we accept that Muhammad was a prophet, and that what he has said was revealed to him, as all Muslims do indeed believe, then we believe that this system is a divine one, is a revealed one. And we believe that if ever it is followed, it brings, as it did in past, it brings upon humanity happiness, peace, love, and worthy civilization. Thank you so much.